Dear Justices of our High Court, my name is Bryan Blakeny, founder of EQ Education and author of the transformative book, Top Secret, Declassifying the Meaning of Life, The 9 Keys. Hopefully you've received a complimentary copy with this letter.
This letter and book are a gift to you for my 50th birthday. I hope it can also be a gift for our deserving and figuratively shell-shocked nation. I write to you for the following reasons. 1. To highlight to the High Court the urgencies upon us. 2. To offer a few insights from my nearly 3 decades in the mental health field. 3. To humbly share a few thoughts and requests to support, ennoble, and purify the work you strive to do in the best interests of our entire nation. With almost 3 decades of experience in mental health and personal development, my work is dedicated to nurturing a love of wisdom, truth, and virtue, to awaken critical thinking through spiritual intelligence and a noble character. Further, my work inspires a clear understanding of our purpose on this planet, what our mission is in serving and uplifting all of humanity in preparation for the vast and eternal realms to come. In order to make America truly great, we must become united as a people, as diverse brothers and sisters, not in uniformity or sameness. We must address and reverse any propensity towards religiosity and Christian white nationalism. Instead, our ideologies must become world-embracing, our hearts willing to learn and burn with love and kindness for the oneness of humanity, and not for our own group alone. From space, we are all fragile earthlings, united in our common needs and hopes, infinitesimal, humbled by the vastness of the cosmos. This divine-like unity requires a heavenly justice, not a human dogma, nor political or religious agenda. It requires a humble and genuine love for God, a valuing of all life, as well as a healthy fear of God and regular deep contemplation into the essence of love and the motive behind creation itself. Nothing less could ever make this nation truly great. Anything less than the oneness of humanity as the highest expression of our love for God or life will likely fail and only prolong the corruption of our leadership and resulting social injustice. Without the oneness of humanity and unity as the crown jewels of human endeavors, the oppressions and suffering of humanity will long continue, making America far worse, a bottomless pit, a ghost. I, along with the vast majority of our country and the world, am concerned that the court has become too far removed from the true impact of their decisions, that their biases have made them cold and apathetic to the needs and wishes, to the concerns and sufferings of our nation. Therefore, I urge the court to recall the difference between explicit and implicit bias, how stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination can be conscious but also dangerously unconscious. These inherent biases result in little or no empathy towards the perceived outgroups. Lo, this is what we see. The court appears to be intentionally overlooking harsh and punitive measures towards particular groups within our society that are not a problem or threat. The president's deportation agenda is clearly not about making this country safe. This you well know. We see the heartless treatment of good, hardworking people who add to our nation, the ripping apart of families, the ruining of decades of vital infrastructure, and wrecking of the economy here and abroad. Minorities without criminal histories being wrongly detained, disrespected, and deported without due process, sent to countries they've never been to, into jails and prisons they don't deserve. Consider and review the recent detainment, handcuffing, and deportation of 73-year-old grandmother Harjit Kaur while doing her routine check-in in California's Bay Area. Mrs. Kaur has no history of criminality, nor is she a threat or mark on this nation. the manufacturing of accusations and false narratives about Democrats and cities being out of control, the violence against peaceful protesters. The evidence for this agenda having a malicious motive is self-evident with the growing attacks on free speech, on science, on critical thinking, and intellectualism. We see increasing attacks on any rational dialogue and the honest pursuit of truth, whether about the economy, health, environment, or social justice, etc. We see vicious threats and vengeful retaliation towards any opposition or viewpoints that differ from the agenda. Each of these are the literal and historical ingredients copied directly from the playbook of rising dictators, particularly the Nazi playbook. Similarly, only one delusional narrative seems to matter anymore, of which it appears the court seems little concerned and feels obliged to aid and embed. The biases and prejudices of this agenda are undermining our nation and must be intentionally rooted out. If the members of the court choose not to recognize or unlearn these biases, even towards a religious agenda, how can they truly protect and help the people of our country? Ultimately, it hurts Christians too. After all, as a percentage and total number, far more crimes and shootings have been committed by U.S. citizens, only a tiny fraction by illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants alone are not the problem. You know this. The problems are with our worldview, our selective tolerance, followed by our policies and steps for transition to legal status. If the motives were pure and noble, making America great would imply creating more opportunities for prosperity for all. Each generation should have a better chance to succeed, not less. Consider how the Gen Zs in particular cannot afford to move out due to the housing crisis, uncertain economy, and unnecessary inflation. Without offense, we wonder, how did most of the justices of our educated high court succumb to drink the Kool-Aid of a spiritually dead and morally bankrupt ideology? Despite our ideologies and perceived differences, human beings will always have more in common than we ever could have in differences. If our hearts and faith are pure, let us unite. Paradoxically, the dogmatic and controlling approaches we see demonstrate a lack of faith or belief in the greater plan of God. Strong-arming is not the plan of God, but of egos and fear. Insecurity needs to control. Faith and love embrace. As you may recognize, the forced agenda and bullying which the High Court and we, the people, are experiencing under the current administration clearly reflects atheism near its worst. For those with eyes to see and ears to hear, this agenda and Project 2025 is not of God, of Christ, of wisdom, nor of virtue or good sense. Quote, "Do you not remember?" it states in Mark 8:18. Take a moment to imagine the divine injunction, "Beware, beware, lest ye deal unjustly with my creation," whispered in your ear each day. As a child in school in this country each day, I recited the obligatory Pledge of Allegiance. Please take a moment to recite and refresh its words. Make its meaning full rather than empty. Make it sacred instead of trampled upon. If those in power truly had the fear of God at the very least, they could in no wise and in good faith divide and hijack our system, a system administered for the people, by the people, and of the people. Ingrained as a child each day were the words, "One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." Each day, despite our current administration's agenda to undo this pledge's meanings, despite the attacks and threats, are you courageously fulfilling your oath to represent, to serve, to protect the rights and diverse unity of all the people? Each day. Lady Liberty reminds us, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. From her beaconed hand glows world-wide welcome. How dare we make this a lie and instead persecute? Could somebody please turn on her light? This nation has been given a golden door of opportunity. How long will we obediently cower to a personality and agenda that is not open to reason, perspective, or challenge? One that does not celebrate nor respect the diversity which this country was founded upon, a nation of immigrants. When and how will the court arise to stop the disparaging rhetoric and stereotypes which have fueled hatred towards millions of honorable people who came to this country legally, many of whom have already been through ordeals most of us cannot comprehend? Where is the hand of true justice, protection, and genuine compassion? What have you forgotten? Think. As many in this country are alarmed and fearful of the push towards fascism and dictatorship, I share a few thoughts to further appeal to your wisdom, reason, and empathy. As a parent, it is a particularly sad time for our nation spiritually. Somehow we chose policy ideas from a con man over decency of character, reason, and a life of service. We see a fundamentalism and obsession with power, devoid of the most basic of values, courtesies, and kindness taught by each of the world's great religions. Instead of the qualities of love and forgiveness, the basic tenets of Christianity, this president selfishly prioritizes vengeance and retribution, hatred, dishonesty, manipulation, disregard for the rule of law, or care for the needs of the poor or middle class. Is this the model and lessons in leadership we really want to teach our children or grandchildren? That the ends justify the means? That it's okay to be as corrupt and toxic as we want to reach the goal? You're either for him or against him, period. And the pro-life platform alone won't save you spiritually. We remind the court of the meaning of the word preside, how the term president was likely intended as an honorary title while in session, rather than a permanent role of power. Consider how, quote, delegates were not convinced that the future incumbents would be able to resist the temptation of nobility, unquote. After all, quote, many who had risked their lives against King George III strove to preserve the New World Order from even the slightest hint of creeping monarchy and aristocracy, unquote. As you are aware, Section 9 of the Constitution states, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. This too has already been violated by our president. How much more will you allow or seek to enforce? Using the light of Lady Liberty's golden lamp, we can see that trust is ultimately the assurance in another's integrity. We have a nation of noble ideals and many potentially good policies, but we are following someone who continues throughout his life to demonstrate a lack of integrity or any virtues worthy of our trust. The fruits of his life are made of plastic, bought and made to look real, yet remain hollow and necrotic. Collectively, we haven't learned that character must come before policies. Otherwise, we risk following a demented hero complex, a Hitler-like figure who cons us with a few policies important to us while we remain naive to the real monster and agenda. Thus, allowing and supporting a corrupt person to change the system is unwise and harmful to the whole. Further, how could he be granted any immunity or led to believe for a moment that he is above the law? Where is wisdom and common sense? Hopefully, you or some of the evangelical community aren't naively expecting this president, Saul, to turn into Paul. To this point, we can see how the Christian right's unrelenting push of corrupted Christian values on society is itself an agenda which violates justice, scripture, and the founding of this country. Along with the recent and active suppression of First Amendment rights, we still see attempts to violate the amendment's clear philosophy on the separation of church and state. I wish to reference the High Court's Zurich versus Clausen 1952 upholding of accommodationism, requesting its broader application in moderation with certain other court rulings, including abortion. Quote, and so far as interference with the free exercise of religion and an establishment of religion are concerned, the separation must be complete and unequivocal. Unquote. Regardless of the covert wording or political tactics used, the current administration's agenda is still obvious. Ask yourself honestly, do we see evidence for the use of coercion by the president or the court? If so, are fairness and justice being upheld for the good of all, as you were sworn to do? Perhaps, quote, a wholly different case would need to be presented. Considering our nation's track record, the broken treaties and ordeals inflicted upon the Native Americans, the chattel slavery of blacks, and the ongoing damage done by this president, compassion must be the watchword, lest we become even more dissonant, Lady Liberty in word, but callous and oppressive in action. Let's not make America gullible again. You also know that the, quote, scourge of violent immigrants is an historic and predictable theme for rising dictators. Yet the court somehow seems to be increasingly dedicated to empowering this obvious dictator. A brief note on women's rights. What is the true agenda behind the ban on abortion? Are you privy to such truths? Are the divine rights of women to decide for their own bodies and health, to choose on their own moral journey, are these a higher or lesser truth than the agenda you have undertaken? Furthermore, for women who have been victimized, will you really force them to carry to term a child by their rapist, traumatizing them further? Humanity is like a starling, determined to soar ever higher and longer. We must strengthen the wing of women, not weaken it. In banning virtually all abortions, let us not lose sight of the profound ripple effect throughout society. Wisdom would first ensure that the necessary support services are in place beforehand, so that the influx of perhaps unwanted children doesn't end up being a burden on unprepared mothers, families, government, and future society. Will childcare be free and universal? Without forcing our values on others, let wisdom and care resound. Let it resonate. You may recall the original meaning of the word respect, to look again, beyond stereotypes and prejudices, to honor the dignity of each soul on its own merit without precedent. Please look again, look multiple times, to honor and protect the dignity, the rights, and the prosperity of all, regardless of race, ethnicity, origin, or legal status. Give each one of them due process with dignity and respect. How you treat the least among us is how you would treat Christ. Are we our brother's keeper? We most certainly are, especially for those who call themselves Christian. To whom much is given, much is required. The future of our nation and world, young and old, and the hopes of children for generations to come, of all backgrounds, are in your hands. This is a mighty burden and responsibility on your soul, in this life and beyond. If little changes, it will become further obvious that the court's loyalty is to a morally and spiritually bankrupt president, to a fascist and fear-based ideology, deprived of wisdom, compassion, and purity of motive. Your decisions will also be judged by future generations and by an all-seeing Creator whose justice is inescapable in the realms to come. My name, Bryan Alexander, means spiritually strong and powerful, protector of mankind. This meaning has inspired my life's purpose since childhood. Most children have hopes and dreams for their future. It is with honor that this letter to you was part of mine. I recall, quote, "Unless ye be like children, ye shall not inherit the kingdom," unquote. Qualities of curiosity, purity, fairness, integrity, honesty, kindness, and respect come to mind. Therefore, in the spirit of my inner child, I, Bryan Alexander, implore you and the court to reach for higher conscience, to name and abandon allegiance to any godless agenda, any degraded human, to evil, to oppression, to inequality, or anti-intellectualism. Rather than being like a timid and obliging butler, I call you instead to become the confident owner of your estate, the source of all good, praiseworthy among all the nations, a lighthouse and beacon of heavenly outpourings, all with a healthy separation of church and state, just as I as a therapist strive not to impose my values or beliefs on my clients. We guide with unconditional positive regard in welcoming and understanding our shadows, nurturing a healthy self-esteem, as well as wisdom, virtue, and self-determination. While there is still time, to whom and what will be your loyalty, values, and constitution as you preside? God only knows. We pray for wisdom, not agenda. If you will not step in to protect the people, to advocate on all sides, who will? May we humbly and in unity lift our lamp beside the golden door. Thank you for your time and efforts to guide and protect our diverse nation through these daily attacks on what remains of our democracy. We the people. Signed, Bryan A. Blakeny. Both scripture and research suggest that this physical world is a womb world whose purpose is to develop spiritual qualities and characteristics, which will enable us to function more fully in the realms only glimpsed by those who have had profound near-death experiences.
Thank you for joining me on this journey. Be sure to check out and sign the petitions below. A PDF copy of this letter is also attached.